Imagine walking into a parlor in the 19th century. The room is dimly lit, draped in heavy black fabric. A family gathers solemnly around a figure in the center. A photographer carefully adjusts his camera, ensuring everything is perfect. But his subject isn't moving, because they have already passed on. This isn't a funeral. It's a photo shoot. In the Victorian era, mourning was more than just grief, it was a way of life. The dead were honored, their memories preserved in ways that may seem eerie to us today. But to them, it was an essential ritual, a way to keep loved ones close even after death. From elaborate mourning veils to the haunting practice of post-mortem photography, let's uncover why Victorians took photos of their dead and how mourning became an art form in itself. During the Victorian era, named after Queen Victoria, who reigned from 1837 to 1901, death was ever present. Disease, high infant mortality, and poor medical knowledge meant that losing a loved one was almost inevitable. But grief wasn't just personal, it was a social event, with strict rules dictating how one should mourn. And no one embodied this more than Queen Victoria herself. When her beloved husband, Prince Albert, died in 1861, she went into mourning and never came out of it. She wore black for the rest of her life, over 40 years, setting a standard for mourning culture that the public followed. Women, in particular, bore the weight of mourning etiquette. The deeper your loss, the longer you wore black. A widow, for example, was expected to wear full mourning attire, including a black dress, heavy veil, and jewelry made from jet or even human hair, for up to 2 years. After that, she could transition to half mourning, where she could slowly introduce gray, lavender, or white into her wardrobe. But why such a strict dress code? Victorians believed mourning wasn't just an emotional state but a physical transformation. Mourning veils, sometimes called weeping veils, served both practical and symbolic purposes. They shielded a grieving woman's face from public view, adding an air of mystery and sorrow. They also protected mourners from the miasma, the believed airborne toxins of death. Mourning attire was a way to signal grief, but it also reinforced societal expectations. Grief had a time frame, and one was expected to mourn properly. But mourning wasn't just about dress, it was also about memory. And what better way to remember a loved one than through photography? In the 19th century, photography was still a luxury, and most people didn't have many pictures of their loved ones. When someone died, it might be the last chance to capture their likeness forever. Enter post-mortem photography. These haunting images often depict the deceased posed as if they were still alive, sitting in chairs, lying in beds, or even propped up with supports to create the illusion of standing. Some had their eyes painted onto the photographs to make them appear more lifelike. For families, these images weren't macabre, they were comforting. It was their way of holding on to their loved one's presence. Children, in particular, were frequent subjects. With infant mortality rates high, many grieving parents had no other visual memory of their child except for a post-mortem photograph. The idea was not to be morbid but to preserve the child's image in their most peaceful state. Some of these images were even placed in lockets or framed with strands of the deceased's hair woven into intricate designs. In a world without digital memories, these mementos were the only way to keep a loved one close. The Victorians were deeply fascinated with death, but they were also obsessed with what lay beyond it. The 19th century saw a rise in spiritualism, the belief that the dead could communicate with the living. Séances became a popular pastime, and many grieving families turned to mediums to contact their lost loved ones. Some even tried to capture spirits on camera, leading to the rise of spirit photography, where ghostly apparitions mysteriously appeared in images, though many of these were later exposed as hoaxes. For Victorians, death wasn't the end, it was simply another state of existence. And mourning, in all its forms, was a way to stay connected to the departed. By the early 20th century, mourning rituals changed. The elaborate customs of the Victorian era faded away, partly due to World War I, which brought mass death and forced society to grieve collectively rather than through extended rituals. Black mourning attire became less rigid, and post-mortem photography largely disappeared as cameras became more accessible, allowing people to capture their loved ones while they were still alive. Yet, echoes of Victorian mourning traditions remain. We still wear black to funerals, keep photographs of lost loved ones, and even preserve locks of hair or sentimental jewelry. Their customs may seem eerie now, but at their core, they were acts of love, a way to hold on to those who had passed. So the next time you look at a photograph of a loved one, think about how precious that memory truly is. The Victorians understood that in their own unique and haunting way. Thank you for watching The Whispers of the Past. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from history's shadows.